Good morning and welcome to Talking Points here on the Content Capital. This is WESN. I'm Keaton Shaw. This is Talking Points. This morning it seems a bit cloudy, a bit overcast. The sun is not shining, but nevertheless, I hope you woke up feeling well this morning and I hope you have a great day ahead. And as we always start our day with the conversations and the latest that's happening in Trinidad and Tobago, there's quite a bit to discuss because later on in the program, we're going to focus on a topic that was raised last week, but not for the first time. The first time that it actually came to light was before the budget was read last year by the Minister of Finance, Colin Imbert, and that is in relation to the National Insurance Board, as well as the retirement age. It's now been explored, or at least being considered, seriously to raise the retirement age from the age of 60 to 65 within the public service. And later on in the program, we will also have a discussion from the global perspective of what a war between Russia and Ukraine might look like for Trinidad and Tobago. But first, as we get into our first topic, the first set of discussions, let me introduce my co-host colleague, my good friend, and formerly the birthday boy, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. Yes, the birthday boy. I just want to touch on a couple of things before we get into the real topics we're going to discuss at length today. First of all, we have to remember the fact that there are Trinidadian, Trinbagonian nationals in Syria, and their status still remains in doubt. And we do have to ask, really and truly, what is the ethical thing there? It's a complex issue. We've gone about it a year ago on this very show. But I do think, though, that ultimately the kids at the very least are innocent. And you could make an argument for most, if not all, of their mothers, that is to say, the wives of those that went over there to fight. Also, Mr. Gypsy Peters, if you are truly preparing for eventuality and putting plans in place, technically speaking, that would also include negotiations for the events that is supposed to be in place and ready to go, because you can't wait for a last-minute decision and do no planning, and then try now to do last-minute negotiation. It don't work so. But I mean, what am I supposed to know? After all, you wanted to discuss about something that's not in your portfolio in an interview. Who would have thought? And lastly, I just have to point out with regards to, foreign used cars, they're worried about the industry. The problem is, we have too many cars on the road. But then, is that a problem with the used cars dealership? Or maybe that's just also partially a symptom of our public sector or public transportation system not being healthy, not being efficient, not being reliable enough. Because, trust me, when roads are clogged and you have a good public transportation system to use, you're going to use it. You're going to go on your suit on whatever public transportation service is provided because you just don't want to deal with the hassle of traffic. Well, traffic is slowly but surely going to increase because we just seem to want to ignore the problem like everything else. So what I'm going to say, it's a multifaceted thing. Well, used cars dealers, more cars on the road, all of these things, it's just going to slowly but surely explode. But that's my take on it. We don't have to get into that today. We do have some other things to talk about. Unless you want to weigh in.
Where do I start? How do I analyze that? Okay, just
quick
one
responses.
quick contribution to what you were saying in relation to Gypsy Peters. I'm not the biggest fan of Gypsy Peters.
Yeah, of course.
I have not always thought highly of him. I personally think that he's in that position collecting a salary whilst doing nothing. He has not actually done anything to help Carnival evolve, especially over the last few years, seeing that it was critical time for Trinidad.
Don't even just say evolve, to help Carnival go on.
Hold on. I also believe that there was a serious lack in communication between the relevant ministry as well as the NCC. And adding to that, I also think Gypsy was the front man, as with most chairpersons within state boards, when there's some sort of errors on the part of the ministry. I'm not wholly blaming the ministry. I'm blaming this entire process and procedure. So again, I'm not the biggest fan of Gypsy, and I'm not defending Gypsy. I'm just simply saying that it's an all-round problem.
Gypsy was the one that said they had plans in place, ready to go when they got the word. I'm paraphrasing there. Having plans in place would have probably included giving the Calypsonians a heads up, doing at least some preliminary negotiation so you're not trying to settle this now after your 1 month taste of whatever we can get begins.
But Sean, at the same time, let us be a bit more practical. Because I get what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. I understand what you're saying, and we're thinking idealistically.
No.
But
I'm thinking, how do you plan something
realistically, all that was part of public relations. They knew that they didn't have the time. They knew that with everything that was being thought out, they couldn't put things in place. Because from the time the Attorney General last year made his comments, you would have thought, okay, all right, there's something in the works, they're talking and whatnot. This was something that seems as though it was decided just before Christmas or right after Christmas.
Probably right after Christmas.
And so you know that they didn't have the time. All of what Gypsy said was public relations on their part, because it easily has backfired as probably expected. But at the same time, what's happening? The NCC is going ahead. The NCC is trying their best. There's a huge disparity between TUCO and the NCC right now. TUCO themselves have come out against the NCC. One Calypsonian, Devon Seals, was on AM Prime yesterday with Andy Johnson.
Yes. And
he himself stated, yes, there seems to be major miscommunication. TUCO had to cancel their 2 planned events over the weekend. And we are waiting to see what comes out of that. I believe they were meeting with the NCC, was it yesterday or later on this week? But as I said, all of what Gypsy said, Sean, all that was just a facade.
But we have to hold those that speak to account for what they say. And if he wants to fall on his sword or say things, and if he is foolish enough to think that it's not going to come back on him, then I don't know what he's doing there, being the front man, saying things that he may or may not know are not feasible.
But then, if that is the case,
if he knows, don't be upset with people calling him out.
If that is the case, well, Gypsy has always been like that. He's always been like that. That's nothing new. What we experienced in Talking Point was nothing new. But if that is the case, shouldn't the minister also be held accountable? Because the minister, as far as I'm aware, in the last few years, has not done very much. Somebody correct me if what I'm saying is inaccurate.
Okay.
He has brought forward a bill for Napa. He has brought forward a bill for SAPA. But tell me, shouldn't the minister himself be held accountable?
Let's not stay too long on this, but I will agree with you, one, and say yes, the minister, and then cabinet. Because the budget part of it is cabinet, but a lot of the details and the planning and pushing the portfolio of culture is the minister. And let's just leave it at that.
So, speaking about individuals hired within the public service, we just spoke about, we use Gypsy as a reference for the chairman of the NCC. Now let's take a look at permanent secretaries, because yesterday at the Nutrimix Hatchery in Couva, where the Prime Minister attended the opening, and by the way, there was protest by former Caroni workers, the Prime Minister stated that he thinks that we should start looking at private sector specialists, those with specialty jobs or specialty training within the private sector, to be considered for the position of permanent secretaries within the relevant ministries. What is he stating is that rather than we have individuals who get promoted based on seniority, you need individuals who will get that position because they are actually rather high-paying positions. It's often touted that permanent secretaries are more important, or need to say the backbone of the ministries and how they operate. He's stating that we need expertise within those areas and that we should start considering hiring those from the outside and bringing them to the inside. There are 2 sides to this. The first side is, yes, he's right. You need expertise and specialists within those areas. The second part is, who are these experts in terms of who's going to be hiring them? Is the government going to be hiring them? Because if that's the case, every single businessman in Trenton who finances the government.
There is a third part to this, and I guess it all depends on what is the role and the purpose of the permanent secretary. Are they literally just to be a secretary that acts like a secretary for the minister and oversees the ministry and is an administrator? Is that all? Or is the permanent secretary a technical expert? I was always under the impression that the permanent secretary is supposed to be the technical expert. That is what kind of sears the political process because the elected official is not always going to be a subject matter expert. And more importantly, if you take national security for an example, you almost never want a career military man to take up the civilian leadership post of national security. So, listen, I'm going to always harp on that. But
we are beyond that.
My point is, the elected officials are there to express the will of the people, not necessarily to have to be the brain on technical matters. It's about the decision making about what's best. And the permanent secretary, I always thought, was the advisor or the person to ensure that there's someone in charge that knows the field. So if the prime minister is saying that we don't have expertise at the top of the ministries in the form of the permanent secretary, and that also they're not being promoted or hired on merit. And to me, that's just basically saying the system of our public service is not functioning properly.
But it is not. It is not, and that's been clear
and hiring
for how long now?
Hiring on the outside as a general statement is not necessarily going to fix that, because what about all the other positions underneath the permanent secretary? Are they somehow being promoted on merit, just not the permanent secretary?
Hold on.
I'm sure it's seniority there too.
This is something that the entire public sector service needs to be ironed out. It needs to be sorted out. This is perhaps just one step that the Prime Minister is considering. As the good lady from Santa Cruz pointed out yesterday, sometimes you have to start from the top. When we look at a pyramid, we always say, well, you need to start from the bottom and build up to the top. No, I think it's going to have to be the other way around now, because hopefully with an expert in that position, you're going to see some change from the top. You're going to see some new vision. You're going to see some new direction. And again, I'm stating hopefully, because my concern is, okay, why not experiment with this? There will be many people in the public service who will be very angry and will react badly to this. But if the Prime Minister, and by extension, Cabinet, and the whole of Parliament, including the opposition, gets some sort of say, similar to what they do in Barbados, gets a say in who becomes permanent secretary, then fine, I could see that working, because at least it will try, it will try to forego any sort of friend getting that position.
Yeah, but hey, once you put it into Parliament and Parliament has a say, at the end of the day, the opposition is a minority for a reason, right? They're the opposition for a reason. So government is going to have more of a say than the opposition, and the risk of nepotism or favors or what have you will probably increase. The problem, ironically, now you have, that's really the flip side. When the Prime Minister is saying, we need to not promote by seniority, we need some other mechanism. Who controls this other mechanism? How will it be done? Will it be the Public Service Commission, is it? Or will it be Cabinet? Because I could understand where, on a practical level, Cabinet ministers might look at some of their permanent secretaries and say, wait boy, this really don't make sense. The person 2 steps underneath the permanent secretary might be the one doing all the work. I don't know. And there's a legit case to have this person replaced, and they want to do it in as quick a manner as possible. But then you open the door to, well, it could be quick, it also could be corrupt. And then all of a sudden we have a whole set of party people as permanent secretaries. The permanent secretary should, I believe, idealistically be apolitical. So I don't have a problem with the career path of the civil servant working their way up the ranks.
But hold on. But then right now, Sean, you can make the argument that permanent secretaries, again, they're permanent secretaries. They don't come and go as administration changes. They are apolitical.
Right. That's it. Yeah, but if you appoint, that's the next thing. If you appoint one, or if a political party or political elected official has the power or a say in the appointment, then you get like what you see in the U.S. Supreme Court, where not, because you can't get rid of them, so the appointment now becomes extremely political. But even if the candidate is not, even if the candidate is privately wanting to be more moderate and fair-minded, they either have to play the game or they will be
so then
dragged through the mud.
So then is perhaps the suggestion of making that position contractual, right? For example, boards usually get contracts of 3 years. Should that also be considered, or will that leave room for more political?
Next thing, first of all, someone still has to award the contract every time it comes up.
But what's
so who does that?
What's the solution then to people just being promoted based on seniority, but not having the expertise, not having that specialty?
Changing your HR policies, first of all.
Yes, but to what?
To say merits, right? So that when somebody who is 10 years junior, but have more qualifications and has effectively in the ministry or in the public service has done more and have higher job performance, could watch a senior person get a higher position than him, and he could go to the courts and say, hold on, I'm suing the ministry for this because they're promoting on seniority.
Well, that has happened.
Right.
That has happened.
And that has to be systematically and completely changed, because at the end of the day, I don't care how long you've been there, being there and surviving, that doesn't mean anything.
So then we're looking at a performance-based.
It has to be performance-based.
Right, great, excellent, fine, fair enough. Who's going to assess that performance?
Well, I mean...
So you see, we're hitting snags. In everything we do, we're hitting snags.
Who normally does it, actually?
Well, again...
I would assume the Public Service Commission.
You got Public Service Commission, and then you've got managers.
Right, but now the Permanent Secretary, of course, will be the commission, not managers. But again, yes, this is where maybe from the top matters, but I would say you don't necessarily just start from the top. You do have to change the HR culture from the top to bottom, but it will technically be from the top, because you have to have somebody to enforce managers to do it properly, and if they don't do it properly, they'll face consequences, and so on, all the way down the line. Because if you just change the permanent secretary position and how it's being hired alone, and the rest of the public service remains the same, the culture is not going to change, and I don't know if you're really going to see the benefits that you're looking to see.
Anyway, let's conclude this particular discussion right here. In concluding, I will leave you with comments from the Prime Minister on this, and I quote, "Many of them are not managers and do not assume managerial responsibility for the departments that they head that impact so importantly on the day-to-day lives of persons, whether you are investor or consumer, and will require some significant changes in the public service of the 21st century. The Constitution that was written in 1962 is not wholly appropriate for Trinidad and Tobago in the 21st century in 2022. Okay, great, excellent. So for Cheryl Hines, pack your bags.
Is he saying that they are not managers or they're not supposed to be managers?
He's stating that they are supposed to be managers.
Right, because I just want to know if our permanent secretaries are different to other nations' permanent secretaries.
They are currently managers. But he's alluding
they don't have abilities.
Exactly. They don't have the vision, they don't have the accounting expertise, they don't have the ability to carry out their duties, because guess what? They got there because I worked in the public service and I grew.
You could try contracting some of it out to an HR, not completely, but to a private HR firm, maybe. That is privatizing it in that way, to some extent, maybe. But of course, here's the trick. With every suggestion, there will always be a risk. So it's something that has to be managed and managed carefully.
Folks, listen. Seniority does not necessarily equal to expertise. Understand that.
Yep.
People are going to be very upset with the comments on the part of the Prime Minister, but there are many pros to it and there are cons as well. But as with everything, so be it. We will continue, exactly, we will continue trying to dive into this and trying to analyze it further. But for now, let us end it there. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to speak about the National Insurance Board and their plans to raise the retirement age to 65. And I have one question. They've cited the pandemic over the last 2 years as one of the reasons for this. I have a question in relation to that.
That might be unfortunate reality.
When we come back, I can't see how that has affected us too much, but in this sense, when we come back, we'll get into that. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WESN.
I'm joined on set today with Dr. Chelsea Garcia. She's a palliative specialist as well as internal medicine doctor as well as hospice care.
Palliative is for anyone with serious illness whereas hospice is for someone that may die in the next 6 months. Now, unfortunately, because people confuse the word palliative with hospice, we see a lot of patients presenting late in the course of their illness.
So the first part about holding a hockey stick is knowing how to hold it. You're only allowed to play with the flat side of the stick. So the ball is not allowed to hit the back of your stick whatsoever.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. Sean Michael Small alongside me this morning as always. Mr. Small, welcome to the program now. Our commentator via Zoom, our youth commentator, former youth parliamentarian, Kemuel Pascal. Good morning, Kemuel.
Good morning to you, Sean and Keaton, and good morning to your viewers and listeners as well.
Good to have you on the program once more. Kemuel, we're starting this discussion on the National Insurance Board and the intention to increase the retirement age to 65. I use the word intention, even though they're stating it's one of three options, is because if we look at the timeline of events, since June of last year, the Minister of Finance, Colin Imbud, indicated that they were exploring that idea. Now, since then, that has not been brought off the table because around budget time, those were one of the areas that people were discussing. It was not discussed at length within the budget, but it certainly was something that people were considering as one of the things the minister was going to implement. We did not see that happening. But now, over the course of the last year, we've heard about the NIB only being able to sustain itself for about 20 years again, as it is basically collapsing slowly. It was also revealed that of 2021, they had over $1 billion of a deficit. That is because their investments and their benefits did not equal to the amount that was contributed. Another significant factor is that the amount of businesses in Trinidad contributing to the NIB is now decreasing as well, for various reasons. But let me stop talking and let me give everyone an opportunity and chance to contribute. Starting off with you, Kemuel, increasing the retirement age from 60 to 65, that is already something that is in the private sector. This is now what is being touted for the public service. Do you think that this is a fair move on the part of the government, considering that there may be individuals who have worked there all their life, who are about to retire, or perhaps nearing retirement in a few years, and may have made more than the contributions that they're required to make, but now may have to work longer.
Yes. So, good morning once again. So, my view on it is really and truly that it's been something that has been spoken about for years. I mean, going back as far as under the People's Partnership from between 2010 and 2015. And so, it's a matter of us examining what is the reason and the purpose for the government or the Minister of Finance putting that particular idea or policy forward. And you kind of gave context as to, well, you alluded to the contextualization of it, which is that they are saying that the NIB fund is basically collapsing. And we know how the NIB framework really and truly works in that they invest with the hopes of getting returns and also based on contributions from persons working. However, what I would say is that if we are moving towards it, it means that we should move towards it in a gradual manner. And I think when the matter came before Parliamentary Joint Select Committee last year, that's what one of the officials from the NIB was saying, is that it isn't that they plan to just move towards it immediately, but it should be something that is done gradually. And I would support it once it is done gradually, because as you mentioned, there are persons who would have worked their entire life and now they're looking at the hopes of retiring and whatever plans that they may have. And then now we see the retirement age is wanting to be changed. So I think it's a matter of them doing it in a gradual step-by-step process and informing people within the public sector accordingly.
Sean, just based off of what Camille is stating, they're doing it from a gradually. So we're trying to ensure that there is change in order to make this sustainable. Right now it's not sustainable. But we need to do it gradually. I mean, how longer can we wait? I mean, the deficit since 2017 has been increasing.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I want to point out. This is a situation where Peter's going to pay for Paul. It's just who is Peter and who is Paul might change based on what's being done. Okay, the retirees might have to pay for the issues with the system, or the rest of the country might have to pay, or future generations might have to pay. It's not as though the politicians are paying, right? And you could argue that, again, this is one of the things internationally where politicians prefer to just leave it alone. They don't want to touch this thing. It's kind of like Petrotrin. The fact that the PNM sees the need to interfere with it and to intervene now, and okay, I think Camille was saying the People's Partnership also spoke about it back when they were in power. The fact that our political class is seeing the need to intervene in this tells me that it's something that probably has to be done possibly sooner rather than later, because you don't want the situation to fester. Camille says gradual. Now the details, that could be, debated. There's a lot of different things you could do. One of the things that just easily comes to mind is you could grandfather people based on time served. That is to say, if I am 60 and I have worked my entire life in the public service and you're going to make this change now, well, you could say, well, okay, but people like you, people of a certain age, 60, who are now going to retire, they're not necessarily going to have to continue going until 65. Now the question is, what is the cutoff point? Who do you grandfather to get to retire at 60, and who now has to look at the fact that they have to go till 65? Because at the end of the day, if it's not as though everybody entered the public service at the same time. So just because you're 60 does not mean that you spend your entire waking life in the public service necessarily, right? Some people, they want to get into the public service, they work in the private sector until they can get in. And then now, some people work very hard in the public service and they're the backbone of our country. And then other people, I don't know if they've worked that hard. I don't know if I'm going to be too concerned if they have to not work until 65.
All right, okay, so maybe that last factor is something that, I mean, yes, it's something to certainly consider, but out of the realm of the discussion. One of the things
yes, that is true.
One of the major issues, Camille and Sean, that we're hearing about, it's not new. We focused on this over the last couple of years, is that we have an ever-increasing aging population, right? Our population is getting older, but at the same time, you have a population of many young people dying very early on in life. So life expectancy is one thing, aging population is another. So that in itself is crippling the contributions to the NIB. But consider this as well. So we spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic. The biggest benefits that the NIB gives out is, of course, the pension plan. But they're stating that because of many factors, COVID-19 being one, of course, and probably the biggest over the last couple of years, the number of contributors towards the National Insurance Board, it now stands at 993. Now think about that. Throughout Trinidad and Tobago, you only have 993 organizations contributing to the NIB. Now, that could mean many things. That could mean individual companies, or that could include holdings companies, conglomerates as well. We don't know. It was just that number that they gave us. Seeing that may be the case, because we have that number, is increasing the contributions per individual from 13.2% to 16% perhaps the better way to go, rather than making people work longer? Because again, one of the considerations is individuals who would have worked all their life. I met an individual on Sunday who indicated to me that he's been working for 30 years. He's made over 1,500 contributions to the NIB, which is more than what is required, right? But he's stating he has to work another 15 years if this happens.
Well, quick thing. Actual years worked and number of contributions should be considerations on a case-by-case basis for whatever they do, whatever compromise they try to put in. I'll just interject that.
Of course. And that's good, but Kemuel, with that, what Sean stated, I mean, number of years and contributions, should the contributions increase from 13.2% to 16%, rather than increasing the age?
What I think is that, as I was mentioning before, gradually, but I don't think that increasing the percentage of money that goes towards the monthly contribution, that is, towards the NIB fund, is necessarily a great idea. And I think there may be pushback, not just by the working class, but really and truly by the union, because they will say, persons are already working for less money, they're already working on 2013 salary in some cases, and now you are telling me that I have to contribute more to a fund that I will of course benefit from in the end, but it's a matter of I am already getting little. Now that the fund, now that you are proposing an increase, that is something that needs to be widely considered before I would say, yes, I agree with raising it. So at this point in time, I don't think raising it is a good idea, but if it is part of what they intend to do from a gradual standpoint, then I can support it in that regard.
Go ahead, Sean.
I actually think that I think raising the retirement age is the better idea than increasing the contribution, because the aging population situation, right, is compounding itself, because the amount of people that the system has to support is increasing, but not necessarily the amount of people that supports the system. And on top of that, the inflation that we're seeing now, that we could potentially continue to see, the more that outstrips the growth of the NIB's fund, the further and further the fund will more or less fall behind. So the fund basically is trying to keep up. And the increasing aging population means the fund is falling behind. And then the less contributions from COVID means the fund fell further behind. And inflation means it...
Increasing aging population, what you're stating there, also means a smaller labor pool.
Yes.
So with a smaller labor pool, you're still going to have less and less contributions.
And then also there's the fact that you do have people in the private sector working beyond 60, 65. You do have people, like, being 65 now is not what it was like 50, 60 years ago. So the standards have changed. And now we do have to ask ourselves, okay, yes, I know some people would like to retire like how they used to, but we're literally saying, are we going to allow the system to collapse down the line so that we could continue going how we're going just because, right? And again, it's not necessarily directly pertinent to the discussion, but if the public sector was not an inefficient bastion of people who are questionable with their work ethic, then I would be a bit more considerate with regards to the feelings of the individuals. This is, again, somebody is going to be Peter and somebody is going to be Paul, because there are hardworking public servants out there. Some of them, they're going to fall in different categories, so some of them are going to lose out on something no matter which way you go.
All right, so let me be devil's advocate here for a moment. I must question management. It's also a question of management and perhaps a lack of management or mismanagement on the part of governments come and gone. I don't think we've ever thought about the NIB to the extent that we've been looking at it over the last few years. Yes, since 2010, perhaps we've been looking at the retirement age increasing to 65, but nothing has ever been done seriously about it.
But I don't know if that's a question of management, because again, the levers you could pull change this thing are increasing something, the age, the contribution.
I did not finish.
Okay.
Let me tell you what I was alluding to. Because over the course of the pandemic, and it's something that I have been exploring and something I've been studying, we have heard the government state that there is no money. But then when this came into place, I'm going to tell the Minister of Finance to find that money. How much money did the government withdraw from the NIB funds and from NIB investments in order to fund benefits, social security, but social benefits for Trinidad and Tobago? I'm asking the question, did the government take money from the NIB fund in order to use for their expenditure over the COVID-19 pandemic? That is a huge question on the part of the fact that if we look at 2019, 2020, and 2021, from 2020 to 2021, the deficit increased by over $500 million. And you can't tell me, well, it's because more people retired. It's because the administrative cost, they were able to reduce administrative cost. So you can't tell me more people retired, which increased our expenditure by $500 million. Exactly where did that money go? And that is something I'm trying to figure out. Kemuel, we'll probably never get any answers in relation to that. But I don't know if you share my suspicion.
This is what I share. I think that they need to look at the factors which are contributing to the fund having a greater demand, but with an aging population, and ways in which they can sort of try to circumvent that. Because the thing about it is that there may possibly be less jobs within the public sector, and that's the reason why they are going to that. Obviously, they have to go to that extreme, which is to raise the age within the public sector. And so we need to understand we need to ask ourselves, why is it that we're having a greater demand upon the fund, but we're having less contributions, and see how we can attempt to work around that before we look at doing anything else. I don't know if that has been explored by the NIB and by the Ministry of Finance in particular. And I think that's kind of where I see things from right now.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of nations are going through this problem, Japan, the US, etc., because the systems were predicated on older demographics and economic information and realities from, 60 years ago, almost 100 years ago now, we're in 2022. Theoretically, if the fund is just given enough capital, right, it will be able to sustain itself based off of the interest. The trick is to put that capital investment in it.
And to find that capital
investment. And to find that capital. So this goes back now to the complaints that some economists and some commentators might have across the country with regards to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund and what we did with our oil money. And if we ever get a windfall like what we're seeing in Guyana, maybe not on the same level, but if we ever get an energy windfall again, what do we do? Do we do like what Venezuela did? Or do we do like what Norway did? Right? So, because NIB is not going to be the only situation that's going to need money. That's the unfortunate reality that we face as well. But theoretically, if we could get the capital, the investment to a point where the interest could help sustain, because I think there will be a cap to the population. So some of those nations that have this issue, or they had that issue on the horizon, now they're facing reductions in populations and birth rates. Ironically, that gives you the issue at the back end, where the workforce now is not being replenished, but you still have to deal in the short term with the larger, older population. So there's a lot, there could be further chapters, but if we had the money, investment could be a solution.
Folks, we always talk about the government having money and not saving it over the last, decades. Over decades, they have not saved money. But it comes down to us as well. We need to save money. The average retirement lasts for about 20 years. If you live to the life expectancy, that's the average. So a lot of things to consider. The wage, the current pension is not going to increase anytime soon. It's often been political, but that is going to have to freeze for some time. 2, you're going to have to start saving money, because remember, when you retire as well, you're going to rely on savings as well as the pension. And 3, there are so many benefits to actually working longer. So this may actually be a very good idea. Just put aside the NIB for a second and think about it holistically. There are a lot of benefits to working another 5 years.
There's also probably some public servants who might actually want to continue working, and they don't want to be forced out. So there's also that.
So consider it. Think about it. Let's put aside the politics and let's put aside the mismanagement of the NIB, as well as how it's become so unstable and unsustainable. Folks, there's a lot of benefits to retiring 5 years later. Think about it. Anyway, let's wrap up this discussion here. Let's take a break. When we come back, we don't have much time, but there is a topic that we need to touch on. It seems as though, well, right now there's a Cold War taking place. In fact, there are many Cold Wars taking place, but one Cold War has the potential to turn into an actual war. Stay tuned.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One-on-One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One-on-One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One-on-One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
What will happen if Russia actually does attack, is sanctioned, and the Russian energy supplies are all of a sudden cut off, not just from Europe, from around the world? What will happen to gas prices? What will happen to the economies of the world, so dependent on every drop of oil and every liter of natural gas? The impact that this situation can have on one of the world's major energy exporters, Russia, and what it will mean for people behind the wheel of their car, heating their home, or whatever.
Well, Terry, the key thing to remember here is that prices in the oil and gas markets, like so many other markets, are all about expectations for supply and demand. And as you say, Russia is a major player in these markets. It is the second largest producer of natural gas in the world, the third largest producer of crude oil. And those commodities directly affect the prices that you pay at the pump or the prices that you pay for your electricity and heating bills. I've been talking to analysts, and one of the concerns that they have is that if the U.S. and European and NATO allies impose sanctions on Russian exports of oil and gas, that would disrupt the market. But at the same time, there is a fear that President Putin could then retaliate by further cutting off supply of oil and gas to the rest of the world. This would come at a time when we are already seeing shortages in those markets and seeing very strong demand. And as you know, supply shortages, strong demand, that means higher prices. We are already seeing a run up in energy prices because of this dynamic and because of these tensions between Ukraine and Russia. People who are going to fill up their gas tanks are going to be paying more. That's on top of already higher prices across the board, Terry. We are getting another read of inflation tomorrow here in the U.S. We know that prices are up not just for oil and gas, but for food, for products, for a lot of goods that people have been buying throughout the pandemic. About 43% of Russia's overall revenues, of all of the money that the Kremlin took in over the past 10 years, has come from oil and gas, specifically just from those exports. So if it's not able to sell that, it's not bringing in that money. And that's a political problem for President Putin. And certainly he's aware of that reality. At the same time, we've seen kind of this preemptive strike on the part of European countries and NATO countries to try to boost their imports from other countries outside of Russia. So interestingly, we've seen a huge surge of natural gas that's coming from the United States go towards Europe. And they have stockpiled this natural gas. Analysts I've talked to say that they are now kind of prepared to have the stockpiles ready in case there is this sort of cutoff.
CARICOM has expressed its concern with what's spring out between Russia and Ukraine, and Western countries, NATO allies, have now gotten involved. We've also heard of discussions between the Russian allies, Vladimir Putin, and China President Xi Jinping. Let's get straight into the conversation with not much time left. There are many cons to war taking place globally, but focusing on Trinidad and Tobago, it's not good. I mean, first of all, oil and gas is one thing, but did you know that the biggest exporters of grain in the world are Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Romania? The Black Sea, any sort of war will actually halt the export of grain, which will have a major impact on the food supply, but also to Trinidad and Tobago, which is already having problems with grain and a shortage that has led to an increase in prices. That could have a knock-on effect. The price of food will inflate, but to such high amounts that you may see people struggling to even eat meals on a daily basis beyond what we're already experiencing.
Shipping costs might further go up. Cost of food just in general, not just grain, might further go up. Our energy prices, so the revenue we earn, might potentially increase. The question is, I think the benefits before outweigh the costs. Now, how much do the benefits truly outweigh the costs? Interestingly enough, if this happens, because there's an argument that it's not going to happen, Russia might need to find new markets. If they're allied with China, maybe they sell to China, as America is now selling to Europe. Now we might need to find new customers or new trading partners as well, because there's going to be a lot of natural gas coming from the US into Europe. So it might cause the whole situation to change, like rapidly change with regards to who's doing business with who. Can we keep up? Are we too much of a small player that doesn't matter? Or will this affect future plans? Because I have speculated before that maybe China was looking to our natural resources. Well, if Russia all of a sudden has a whole lot of natural gas just available, not necessarily infrastructure to transfer it, but it's still going to be a lot more effective and easier to deal with Russia than to deal with us on the other side of the world.
Kemiel, Europe gets 35% of its natural gas from Russia. There is a possibility that Russia could cut off the supply if there is a war. Trinidad and Tobago will also feel that because the price of oil and gas will go up, inflation will increase.
We still have to also buy gas.
Exactly, because we cannot supply our entire market at a subsidized cost. So, I mean, what we're seeing right now, we're fingers crossed that, of course, this doesn't happen, because any war on any level will potentially affect global markets and just living conditions throughout the world. But specifically for Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, how scary is this for Trinbagonians watching on but not fully understanding the impact of what could happen?
Correct. I'm glad that you brought in the perspective of the Black Sea. And it's a matter of people need to understand what really and truly Russia wants. Because if you recall, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union up until 1991, right?
Yes.
And so they control they have a lot of agricultural stock, and they even have access to the Black Sea by way of their ports. And so that's really what Russia wants right now. Because if we look at the parts of Ukraine that is essentially controlled by Russia, in 2014, according to the Washington Post, it said Russian military forces annexed Crimea on the Black Sea. And so it's a matter of, since then, and even before that, Russia has been trying to insert themselves within Ukraine so as to be able to control majority of the land space, because they know what that will mean for them on a global scale. But when we look at us here in Trinidad and Tobago, and as you mentioned, the devastating effects that it can have on economies that are already crippled and kind of in the process of being further crippled. So that's kind of what will happen. It will have a disastrous effect on economies, even within the Caribbean. And as you mentioned, the matter of grains, you had flour raisin just recently. So it has effects that we are still not aware of.
Yeah, I think the effect on global trade, we couldn't predict what the pandemic will do to global trade. I don't know if we would really predict what this will do to global trade, because, I mean, World War II had a serious effect, but that is so far removed, it's hard to tell. And now we're so much more of a global village with globalization. The consequences, we saw some of it from the pandemic with the shipping container shortage and the cost of shipping going up. So we don't know what's going to happen now.
Now, gentlemen, I think we're also not considering the geopolitical aspect of it. One of Russia and China's biggest allies lies just 7 miles away, and that's Venezuela. And that is something to consider as well, because our relationship right now, where we ourselves in Trinidad and Tobago are playing a political game where we're trying to strike a balance between Western allies and Venezuela, because we can be sanctioned. So with Venezuela just being so many miles off of Trinidad and that being a major ally, I mean, Russia's political influence, China's political influence extends as far as there. I mean, how is that going to affect us geopolitically and just overall diplomatically?
It's not just Venezuela. There's also the fact that we have ties to the United States and China. And right now, those two countries seem to be at odds with each other. The Olympics is not going as well as China would like. There have been multiple political and diplomatic controversies of varying scales because of it. More importantly, I think the pandemic is exposing problems, not just in TNT now, but around the world. We've seen coups happen in Africa, in Myanmar, and we've seen China crack down internally, because the riches and the wealth of global trade isn't there for dictators to enjoy now, so they're looking elsewhere. And China, if Russia decides to go hot, China might also say this is a good distraction, because America can't split its attention like it used to want to do in the Cold War back in the 80s and 90s. Well, back in the 80s. So maybe I go hot too and see who's left, right? Who could try and stop me from taking what I want.
Well, Kemuel, we are wrapping up this conversation now. Like I said, not much time. But within NATO itself, as we're seeing in most organizations throughout the world, such as the United Nations and just generally within governments throughout the globe, NATO has a lot of splits within it. It's not as united as it was a couple of years ago. There are a lot of fractions within it now. I mean, how crucial is NATO strengthening within itself key to try and reducing the prospect of a war taking place? United States intelligence has stated that Russia could attack at any moment.
Yes, so we saw that last week, based on coming out of the White House, that they are saying that Russia's incursion into Ukraine is very imminent and could come as early as this week. Well, I mean, today's Tuesday, and they haven't really moved into Ukraine, considering that there are at least 130,000 soldiers along parts of the border with the US, with Ukraine and Russian border. So the thing about it is that it's a matter of power play, and global bigwigs are essentially putting forth themselves, because as you mentioned, within in the aspect of global trade, there isn't much to take right now, considering that economies are now recovering. So it's a matter of they are trying to get as much as possible to gain, to see who's the biggest player going forward post-pandemic.
But Russia, the sanctions against Russia could further harm the economy. So between that and needing customers for its oil and gas, they have economic reasons. It just depends. Does it cost them more than what they would gain? Or would they gain more than what it would cost?
Well, the sanctions against Russia might actually work in favor of Russia, because that in itself might be a trigger for them to actually invade. But let's not hope for that. We're hoping there's a diplomatic solution that can be found, and so far that has not been the case. There's been a lot of, well, I guess there's a war of words right now between Western allies and Russia. China has stayed quiet, but we know that they're allies with Russia, so let's see what takes place there. Folks, let's break for news on the hour here on WESN. We'll open up the phone lines when we return.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN, the content capsule. If you're just joining us, let's just quickly review what we discussed this morning. Yes, we had a conversation in relation to the NCC and Gypsy Peters, a very minor conversation. We also spoke about the Prime Minister suggesting that permanent secretaries within ministries should be, those within the private service, managers and those with the expertise should be considered for that position as well. We got into the conversation of the retirement age, increasing it from 68 to 65 within the public service due to the NIB slowly collapsing. I don't know how slow it is anymore. It seems as though they're collapsing big time. And finally, well, we briefly discussed with what time we had left the situation between Russia and Ukraine and how that could impact on Trinidad and Tobago. Now we're inviting you to have your say, to contribute to the program. 623-9376, 622-9338. Call in and join us on the program and have your thoughts heard. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Hi guys, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so glad you all finally got to this impending war, and we're seeing that Chancellor Scholz is there this morning, so let's see what they can come up with across that 18-foot table. And yeah, I concur with everything, the geopolitics with them and China and us, all of that. But this morning, I just need to respond, at least make a comment on what the Prime Minister said in response to the human trafficking comment.
Mm-hmm.
I heard him say that the demand for sex and prostitution in Trinidad and Tobago is being driven by a high rate of local consumption, especially in the borough of Chaguanas. So is he saying that there's a greater appetite by Chaguanas businessmen and residents than in St. Clair, Woodbrook, and his own Diego Martin constituency or anywhere else? I think if he and his colleagues are familiar with these individuals who solicit themselves anywhere at all, he should tell Acting Commissioner Jacob, because he needs all the help he can get. And changing acronyms to remove the stigma, I believe your alderman stated, that ain't going to help the commissioner. But more importantly, does the Prime Minister have data to support this allegation? Because according to the International Organization of Migration and the UN, there are 28,500 migrants and refugees here.
Mm-hmm.
Of those, how many of them are prostitutes? What about grandparents, children, and families? You see, it's the ad hominem attacks by this Prime Minister. What would he have said to Rhonda Mingo of Living Waters? That children are being trafficked in the Catholic Church? Or Angie Ramnarine, who does amazing work in Laramie with 100 migrant families who are jobless and close to starvation?
Yes.
What would you say to Diana Mahabir Wyatt? And just one last thing, Ms. Naked of Living Waters said that the draft legislation of migrant policy was put forward to the AG in 2017. But as per usual, there's been no consultation with stakeholders, so no one knows the contents. And when asked to comment on this, the AG directed the question to the Minister of National Insecurity, Fitzgerald Hindsight. But oh no, wait, he's probably not responsible for policies either. So that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
I think with what the Prime Minister stated yesterday, that the Constitution that was written in 1962 does not reflect wholly on a Trinidad and Tobago of the 21st century.
Yeah, that's
now
fine.
in 2022.
That's fine.
Right. That is fine. But consider this. In this day and age, we actually do not have any sort of standardized migrant policy.
Hold on.
We don't have a migrant policy.
Keaton, from what I understand, in this day and age, we don't have a standardized definition for what the word employee means.
Yes.
Right? Think about that.
According to the
Right.
Labour Relations Act, we don't have what is clearly defined. But this, the comments on the part of the Prime Minister, he is trying to address the issue of human trafficking. But to label that, I don't know where he got that from. And that has caused an uproar. But good morning, caller from La Horquita.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And God bless both of you all.
Thank you.
And Trinidad and Tobago.
And to you too.
And I always watching, but I'll never get the opportunity to call in.
I'm glad you called in. Go ahead.
Right? The NIB, bad management. Because I am 69 years of age. I joined it in 71.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sister worked 47 years in nursing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened now, if that joining with the NIB is best the increase.
When you say increase, yes?
Which one? How?
Increase the benefits.
Oh, increase the...
Right? And the age. And here. Right? And the Prime Minister right now, he had to take example from Mia Motley. Right? And for he to think straight, right? You know, long time when I get a carpet, you think better. And a blood pressure, he want that. And we'll have a blessed day.
Thank you, caller. Have a good day. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller.
Did you hear that in the background?
Yeah. Now, the comparisons, I mean, that is something that has been ongoing, the comparisons between Mia Motley and our own Prime Minister. And yes, I do think, and I will say this, it's not just our Prime Minister that could do well to follow her example. There are a lot of world leaders.
Yes, but
I
don't understand
that could do better with
why
communication.
people get upset when we say that perhaps our Prime Minister and by extension our government could take examples from the leadership of Mia Motley.
Not just us.
Why do people get upset with that?
There's a small country to the north of here that has a lot of our people like to migrate it. It's a very small country. You know, it starts off with U, then S, and ends with A.
Why?
They can also take
I don't
a
get
good
why
look
people
at that
get upset.
example.
I mean, look at what Mia Motley has achieved over 2 general elections. Anyway, another call on the line.
Landslide victories, by the way.
Another call on the line with landslide, 13-0.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Mountain slide.
Good morning, caller from Digger Martin.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment concerning the NIB.
Sure.
I hope that they don't raise that to 65 years because I know quite a few people who are hoping to, in a year time or some of them a few months, that they can be able to claim their insurance on them because, and a lot of them are ill and, that's the only thing they're looking forward to right now.
Right.
And I think it would be a great injustice to them. And as far as I know, the NIB is a good company. It has good investments. It makes good investments. And what is responsible, I think, a lot too, is from 2003 to 2009.
Yes.
There are certain ministers and prime minister borrowed money there and did not pay it back.
Oh.
I think that attributes to a lot of the problem you see in, and prior to that as well, way before that. That had happened. And I think that is attributed. I can tell that for first-hand because I saw something there already.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
So have a good morning and enjoy the Valentine's Day.
To you too. Thank you for sharing that information with us. That is a major problem, actually, where money is taken out of the NIB because NIB works as an investment fund.
Exactly.
Right? So when it's taken out and it's not put back in, who's losing out? Who's paying? As you said, Peter pays for Paul.
And there's one more thing that's causing the fund to fall behind on where it needs to be to try to keep up.
Yeah. One of the issues, caller, with increasing this age from 60 to 65 is exactly what you pointed out. People who have worked hard and made more than what was required.
If they're at 60, you could potentially grandfather clause them in and say, well, okay, no, they could still retire. The question is, when do you cut that off?
Where's the gap?
Right?
Yeah. Good morning, caller from Shagonas.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Professor.
Do you know what is an actuarial review in respect to a pension scheme?
I can't say from the top of my head the clear definition.
Well, what is an actuarial review? Is a review of estimated income to see how you can adjust your expenditure. And our NIB law requires that such a review be done not further than every 3 years.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Therefore, it is impossible if people do their work for NIB to go in the position it is.
That's a fair statement, yes.
If people do their work, though.
It's political interference. Mr. Manning came out when the pensions were between 500 and about 700. And when the actuarial review was to be done, he dictated to the actuary the minimum must be $1,000. When that was done, that ate up all the funds. So everybody, if you used to get an IB like me, you end up getting the minimum. Whereas the law requires that you have higher amounts for people who contribute more in sum total, not only the amount of contribution, number of contributions, but the amount per contribution.
Right, so from a tier system.
He didn't satisfy with that, and he went back 2 years after, and he did the same thing. This time he said he wanted a minimum of $2,000. The net effect was that the entire investment income could not pay, and they had to take people's contribution to pay. The International Labour Organization warned them against it, saying you cannot have a pension fund where you are using people's contribution to pay for their pension to pay for people's pension already. When the government changed, the new government, the Bisesa government, wasn't satisfied, and they went and do the same thing, and this time they insist on a $3,000 minimum. And that is the position with it. You could check it, you could do what you want.
Professor, unfortunately, we do have another call. But thank you very much for your contribution.
That's a good point. The political interference, I have to 100% agree with that.
I do agree with you, and thank you for clearly explaining that. We appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day, Professor.
And it's right. You can't use money that's meant to pay for my pension for people already needing payments now.
I fully agree with what the professor said. I will have to go back in time to do my research in relation to all the facts that you mentioned. But if what you stated is 100% accurate.
I believe that's how, particularly with the one-upmanship of one party to the next.
Good morning, caller from San Fernando.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, Keaton.
Morning.
Let me just say this quickly. First time I know somebody whose birthday was on Valentine's Day, so I just say happy belated to the Valentine's Day baby.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me say this quickly about the Keaton, you were talking about the permanent secretaries.
Yes, yes.
You know, people seem to downplay the role of the permanent secretary is the CEO of the ministry.
Yes, yes.
The chief executive officer of the ministry.
Yes.
And and a lot of them that I know are eminently qualified. The issue is they have not been insulated enough, or they have not insulated themselves. I will blame some of them for the position that we're in right now.
Fair enough, yeah.
Because they cower to the executive, to the ministers, when they should not. If permanent secretaries stood up the way they should do in Trinidad and Tobago, the public service would be a different place, you know.
Yes.
We would have better accountability and everything, you know.
Yes.
But the only thing that happens with the political directorate, they can't, most of the times they fire permanent secretary difficult. So if they can't get their way, what they do is that they shift you around. They put you in the doghouse, so to speak. A ministry that have not presented community development and that kind of thing. They've been doing that for years.
Yes.
And don't think this government here, they are having problems with PSs. Now they want to talk about that crap. because they're trying to do the same thing.
They
If you speak to people in the Ministry of Finance and find out what's going on inside there, how the finance minister behaves in that ministry. It is appalling, gentlemen. It is appalling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
I will
for
say
your
this.
contribution.
I find it very alarming because even before anything is said, no context given, just generally speaking, why does the political directorate have the authority to move permanent secretaries around? For all intents and purposes, it is the same thing like having the ability to fire them, because the net result is I could remove you from where I don't want you. So I don't understand how that's even allowed.
And if you're shifting
from the beginning.
around, if you're shifting a permanent secretary from one ministry to another, who then says that this is going to be the new permanent secretary?
That's the other thing. You're not going to necessarily take the CEO of a clothing company and try to put them as the CEO of a movie company or a tech company just like that.
I think the general consensus between governments is one size fits all. It comes across that way. And this is why I like what the Prime Minister is stating is how we're going to go about changing this and doing this better. Good morning, caller from Gasparilla. Hello, good morning, caller.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning, fellas. You know, I like to listen to comments made by people who call in. And I find this, listening to this lady just now, Sean go back me up. And I find it sound real nice. The Minister of National Insecurity.
I can't lie, you know?
Take care, fellas.
Thank you.
Have a good one, caller.
Now, to be fair, recently I've actually defended him more than taken issue with what he's done. Or maybe 50-50. But I ain't gonna lie, that's a catchy name.
If you're able to defend him, you're doing a better job at being a lawyer than he is, sir. Just stating.
The defense is in that let's not overreach with our criticism now. Let's criticize him for where he actually goes wrong as opposed to just because he's a convenient target.
Tell me if I'm being unfair in my criticisms. I have no problem with you stating that.
Generally speaking,
but
no.
if you are able to defend the Minister of National Security, you are a far better individual, a far better attorney that's unqualified as compared to him.
It was more like just preemptively defending him from the natural progression of the most recent situation he put himself in, right, with regards to what he was and was not responsible
Since
for.
we brought up the topic, because we're waiting for the call, we have about 45 minutes again for calls.
So we have enough time for 2 more calls if you call in quick.
But since
cut off at 9:26.
Are waiting on that, since we brought up the Minister of National Security, this is a minister who, ever since his time, will come into office and continue to blame governments time and gone. This is a minister who, I don't know if he even realizes it, but at least Terence Yalsing was able to admit that he has foot-and-mouth disease. Fitzgerald Hines just has every single foot in his mouth. And he has done absolutely nothing to inspire confidence. I have not heard anything in terms of a solution. I am always hearing some sort of absolute nonsense about, oh, well, we're implementing this program and we're doing this. And I'm just here like, you know, you've blamed everybody. You've not done your job. You're constantly talking nonsense. I mean, you definitely make a good politician, but it's time that we have to change that.
So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. To what extent is he the exception or is he the norm? Because I will say this. Our politicians are the result of what we, the voting public, allowed, as one. And two, I think the post of the Minister of National Security right now is one that, which is funny, usually, and at least this is maybe where we're not so much a banana republic yet, because usually that post is seen as a powerful post, but in TNT, it's a post that nobody wants. Nobody wants. So I don't think he necessarily even wants it behind the scenes. He can't say it. He can't say that.
God only knows what Prime Minister Raleigh was thinking when he put Fitzgerald Hines there and removed Stuart Young.
I have nobody.
And
Stuart Young
Stuart
doesn't
Young.
want to be there.
Anyway,
Stuart Young did not want to be there.
Good morning, caller from Chaguanas. Hello, good morning.
Morning, caller. Hello.
Please turn on the volume on your television.
Yeah, listen
to us
to your
through the
phone.
phone. We can hear you. All right, the person we've lost that call. Call back in. You have a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
I questioned up till this day how it is that this man has been protected and has lasted so long.
This is where
maybe it's individual criticism.
This is where I might sound like I'm defending him, because again, to single him out for those things, I'm sorry, but let's.
If you want me to talk about other ministers and members of parliament, I will, on both sides, I will,
But also, I think part of the issue is that is a ministry. No one wants the post. No one's ready to deal with the post. To some extent, I don't know if he was forced into it or if he actually volunteered. So at the very least, that might be some credit.
Good morning, caller from Chaguanas.
You hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that is what I said. I enjoyed the program very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love everything about both of them, the way they conduct themselves, how they carry out, and answer the questions.
Ma'am, you're speaking to them.
Extremely top of the line.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. But you're speaking to them, huh? We are them.
You will have a great day.
And to you too. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for your support and viewership.
God bless both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for your words, your kind words of encouragement. It means a lot. Feedback does mean a lot. And we can now go into a whole soliloquy about what feedback and merit and government and labor practices and promotion and all of that. But feedback means a lot, especially when we just have a camera to look at.
Listen, I study literature. Spell soliloquy.
No.
Spell soliloquy.
No. So anyway, I think the problem is I am quick to criticize him for what he does not do correct, but it reaches the point where you have to now not just single him out just for those things, because we have that issue almost across the board. Listen, at least we hear from him, right? Tourism Minister, when do we hear from him about tourism?
Okay, I suppose we're looking at the pros now.
Yeah.
I suppose we're looking at the pros. But Sean, listen, you're saying, okay, we're being unfair.
Because I literally forget who the tourism minister is.
His name is Randall Mitchell.
Yes, I forget who he is.
Anyway,
I forget what he looks like.
You're saying that
I forget we have a tourism minister.
Being unfair because of the individual criticism. I'll be more than glad to speak about individuals on both sides of the bench. As far as I'm aware, I don't waste my time on the opposition because they're unelectable, right? They themselves are their biggest downfall, and as long as they're in the state that they're in,
well, okay,
the PNM doesn't have to campaign.
In a UNC area, the PEP came second. Will the PEP slowly but surely repeat what the PDP did? Because, I mean, let's be fair, they both have a crazy founder that talks way too much.
That seems to be the trend.
That seems to be, like, crazy founder talks too much, check.
Lord forgive us if Answer Roger decides to go in that direction. But
okay, no. That's different. That's different.
Crazy person talking much, forming a political party.
He's not crazy. To me, that's a lot more serious than what's in, well, no.
PDP, PEP, it seems as though it's the trends of the P's. We had PP, P, between 2010 and, well, the PPP in itself was you know what, let's just end it. It's just the party of peace.
No, but the point you made, and you said it before about the opposition being unelectable. And again, we say that acknowledging the fact that the opposition, it's not as though they're devoid of good ideas. They're intelligent people. They have the ability. That's what makes it so frustrating, that they don't actually do it effectively. But the fact that you're saying they're unelectable, it's not as though we're saying the PNM is like this titanic great party that gets everything right.
But think about it. When you don't have...
Will the PEP or somebody else sneak up now within the next 2 elections?
I will honestly be surprised if that is the case with the PEP. In relation to the opposition and the PNM, both sides have excellent individuals. To me, Stuart Young is the best thing on the side of the PNM right now. On the side of the UNC, the United National Congress, the opposition, they themselves have good individuals.
They have good individuals.
They have good individuals, but the party themselves are in a state. And you see this thing when we have to toe the line and follow party politics and everything is leader and how great is our leader and mother this and mother that. There was an interview with Ruqaiya Scott that aired last week, one-on-one.
Yes.
When she interviewed Saddam Hussein. I was terribly disappointed in that interview. Terribly disappointed. You're having a discussion about the future of politics and the youth in politics and made everything about the opposition and the opposition leader.
The problem is, how much do you sell out to get any good graces of the establishment, right? With the hope that when it's your turn, you could, but if you sell out too much, you will just end up being a younger version of them.
So, in relation to Fitzgerald Hinds, yes, maybe he faces a lot of individual criticism, but as Sean said, at least he talks, and maybe that is why he faces a lot of individual criticism, because what comes out his mouth, you cannot fight me on that one. Anyway, folks, this is where we conclude this morning's discussion and program. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much to Camille Pascal for his contribution and to all our callers. In your daily endeavors, please stay safe and keep well. We're still in this, folks. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and watch your distance. Personal responsibility for Trinidad and Tobago. And remember, you can't blame the government for everything, but at the end of the day, they are our leaders, right? Personal responsibility. Mr. Sean Michael Small, always a pleasure, sir.
People, the numbers have come back down to the lows. We've seen this before. Let's not be complacent. Please, I understand Carnival is coming up and there's another round of controversies. But more importantly, let what is happening in America stay in America. We are not America. So let's not now take their politics and what's happening in Canada and think it's happening here the same exact way. No, it's not. No, it's not. We have a different culture. We have a different society. We have different problems. Let's not import their ideological problems here to add to it.
Well, Mr. Sean Michael Small, thank you very much. To all in Master Control, our directors and producers, I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point on The Content Capital. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.